All right, welcome to Just Boxing Live. We are here at Sweet Science Boxing Gym in Hawthorne, California. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, lead writer for Supreme Boxing, Anthony Stacks Saldana. What's happening, Stacks?
What's going on, Sean? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man.
You doing all right? I heard you had a little incident last night, man. You got a little wet.
I did get a little wet. We'll get into that. There was a little bit of a melee or a scuffle at the event that I attended last night.
I heard, man.
Yeah.
You know what, though? At least you're okay, man. At least you're all right.
I'm okay, and I hope that everybody who is involved in that event is okay. But we'll go into the details of it. It was actually a good event. There were some very interesting fights. But yeah, I did get a little beer wet for no fault of my own. I know that we just met here. I should introduce Nate.
Yeah, might as well, man. I mean, come on.
So I should mention that with us today, undefeated Nate Weston. Nate, you were from Atlanta, Georgia, the 2015 Georgia Games champion, also a Southern California Golden Gloves champion, and now an undefeated professional, 6-0.
Yes, sir.
And you are fighting again October 27th.
Yes, I am, at the Avalon in Hollywood.
Avalon, Hollywood, that would be Tom Loeffler, 360 Promotions.
360, baby.
And you are prepared, it looks like. You're
Yes,
looking
I
good,
am.
man. You're looking in shape.
Yeah, we're in very good shape right now.
You're feeling confident?
Oh, I'm always confident. Got to be.
I know, man. I do quite a bit of research in preparation for these interviews, and I will say, let's plug what's your Instagram, man? Where can we follow you at?
You can follow me at Nate Weston _. That's Nate Weston _.
I normally wait until later in the show to do that, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to do it a couple times because Nate's Instagram is fire, man.
Yes, sir.
It is all you have such a great personality
Yes,
and such a tremendous amount of confidence. And I know from reading an article that Stacks recently wrote and posted for Supreme Boxing that you have quite a lot of adversity in your background, a lot of things that you had to go through in order to get where you are today.
Oh, yes, sir, of course. But, that's not going to stop the show.
Of course it's not going to stop the show. But let me ask you a little bit about that. So, for one thing, you've actually only been boxing for a handful of years, 4 to 5 years?
4 years.
4 years? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you started boxing in Atlanta, Georgia?
So, actually, I started boxing in Birmingham.
Okay.
But, Atlanta is
Alabama?
Yeah.
But you're from Atlanta?
Yes, sir.
How did you pick up boxing that late, I guess, into your life?
So basically, I was going to college. I had a scholarship to play football for University of Alabama at Birmingham. And once I got done, I was like, hey, I want to stay in shape because a lot of football players, after they get done with their career, they blow up and they're fat. I don't want to look like that. So I said, let me go to the boxing gym. So I called the boxing gym. Coach said, hey, come down. I went in first day, got sparring. It was very interesting. And then they were like, hey, you want to get in? You want to spar? I'm like, sure. And little did I know, I was sparring a pro, and I did very well. It was like my first time. And all the guys were like, hey, how long have you been doing this? Like, this is my first time. And they're like, well, if you stick with it, I feel like you can be pretty good.
So they put you into sparring right away?
Right away.
And it didn't discourage you?
No, it didn't discourage me. I have been and played these street fights before, so I was like, hey, you get knocked out, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I will say that something that you mentioned in the article as well as in other interviews is you have sort of a colorful history with street fighting and things like that.
Exactly.
But I also heard you say, for instance, that when you fight in the street, once it's done, and it's over with.
Yeah.
And I get the impression that what you mean is that you build a certain sense of camaraderie with the opponent.
Exactly.
Is that still true in professional boxing?
That's very true. It's actually even more true, I would say, in professional boxing because, we talk trash. We do what we do. Camps sometimes have beef. They do what they do. But we're both men, and at the end of the day, we know that this is war, and this is a very dangerous sport, and we respect each other. You might see us get mad here and there, like emotions flare. We're emotional people. But at the end of the day, there is respect.
There's always a respect there. And you have been an amateur, I should say. You were an amateur for a period of time, but it was a brief period of time. You had, I think, 13 amateur fights, you said.
Sir.
But you achieved some success as an amateur. In that 13 fights, you won, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, you won a Georgia championship, and you won a championship here.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little bit about the decision, given the success that you were experiencing, to go away from amateur boxing and turn professional that early into your boxing career?
Well, basically, the way I look at it was, hey, I'm getting hit, I'm not getting paid. Or I get hit and not get paid.
So, because you did that, because you only had a real short amateur career, right? your style is basically a professional style. So you jump right into a professional style, meaning for people that are watching that aren't real boxing fans, there's two completely different styles.
Mm-hmm.
In amateurs, it's more of a point system. It's not meant to go out and knock somebody out or hurt somebody or to try to catch them with a one punch to put them to sleep.
Exactly.
You're pitter-patting, you're adding up points, and you come in with only 13 fights, so you have a whole different style of fighting.
Exactly.
In street fights, you're not sitting there trying to add up points.
No,
so you're basically trying to get in there and kick somebody's
Get 'em
ass.
out of there. Yes, sir.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this professional style fits you a lot more better than that amateur style as well, right?
It does. It definitely does. And sometimes you'll see that if you ever see like a top amateur and a top pro spar, in the first few rounds, you see the amateur, you're like, man, he's going off on a pro. But wait. And then you see that pro start getting off. It's a little bit different.
Unless you're Loma.
Yeah, unless you're Loma.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you did is you took a leap of faith, so to speak, in coming here to Los Angeles. And we talk a lot about the benefits of being here as a boxer, but can you tell us, as someone who has taken that leap of faith and decided, without necessarily having the means to come here and pursue your craft, why did you pick L.A. or Southern California or California?
Because to be honest with you, I was, as we're talking about the amateur career at the time, I got to a point in Alabama, I was beating everybody up in my weight division, so nobody really wanted to fight. So I asked somebody, I said, where should I go to fight? Where do they do fights every weekend so I can try to get the experience? Because I tried. They was like, go to California. They do it big out there. If you can fight out there, you can fight. I said, okay, I'm going to go to California.
And has that been your experience now that you're here in California? Do you feel like it's different?
100%. Guys can say whatever they want to say. I've been in many different states, sparred in many different states. There's nothing like Cali.
And that's because of the level of competition.
The level of competition, just the dedication. I think the fighters out here, they just, I don't know, it's just a different breed. I don't really know how to explain it. It's kind of like Alabama with football. Those guys just get it. Out here in California, the guys just get it.
One thing I think back to, man, I think back to Rocky 3 when Rocky gets beat by Clubber Lang. And Apollo brings him to L.A., man. And he walks into a gym, right? And Sylvester Stallone, Rocky's just looking around at all these guys in this gym, right? That's like right in the middle of the hood, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it is in L.A. For people that aren't from L.A., you guys don't have a clue. You don't understand, man. You can walk into any gym, whether it be Azteca Boxing, whether it be Westside Boxing, whether it be Wild Card. It doesn't have to be a big name. It doesn't have to be the Legends, or it doesn't have to be the Rocker. Any one of these small boxing gyms has the most elite sparring and elite fighters that you will find. You might not hear about them on DAZN or Golden Boy or Top Rank, but I can tell you there's hundreds, if not thousands, of hungry fighters out here like yourself just waiting to make a name.
Exactly.
And this is the hotbed. This is why people like Loma, people like Crusher Kovalov, people like Triple G come out to Southern California, because this is the spot.
Exactly.
This is the spot. If you're going to be a top-notch boxer, you have to come to LA to get your sparring. I know people that represent the Bay Area, people that represent Salinas, people that represent Sacramento, people that represent all different parts of the Stockton, different parts of the United States, not just in California, but they all end up in Cali for sparring. And that's Southern Cali.
Yes, sir.
And that's the truth.
It's the dead truth.
What are your thoughts on heavyweight world champion Clubber Lang? No, I'm just kidding. This is where we get our boxing knowledge from on the show, from Rocky movies. I'm not going to lie. Everybody loves Rocky movies, right?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not wrong. Come on. You've seen them all, right?
Yeah, I do.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. So your transition to Los Angeles, though, wasn't without adversity.
No, sir.
Which is to say that aside from leaving your family, I think it's safe to say that you didn't have a set career path necessarily when you got here.
No, sir.
So what was that experience like?
It was hard. I ran into a lot of different situations, We can get specific if you want to ask questions, but I've seen a lot of different things.
Is it true that you were homeless for a period of time?
That is true.
And by that, meaning you were living in and out of cars and showering at gyms and doing things like that?
Living wherever I could. 100%.
And how long would you say that went on before you started to find your rhythm in boxing in California?
I would say the very hard parts, like the hardest parts of it, at the absolute worst, like not knowing where I'm going to be day to day, that went on for about 3 months. I would say the complete homelessness of it, probably about 4 or 5 months.
That's got to be tough, man. you know, in a way, in a sense, to me, it seems like it would make you stronger because you've now gone through that adversity and you want to become the best to get yourself out of that situation. But in the back of your mind, you're still thinking to yourself, man, I'm stuck here. I'm homeless. Is it ever going to get better?
Exactly.
You know, so that your mentality must have been everywhere, bro, you know.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere. But, you know, basically where I come from, you know, we don't really have anything, you know what I mean? So when you're sitting here and you're sitting in this struggle, this bottomless pit, you're looking at the stars at night with nothing, you're like, man, if I go back home, what I'm going back to? I'm going back to the violence. I'm going back to dysfunction. I got to roll my dice out here. I can stay out here every day because even though I was in that situation, I truly was happy because I was doing what I love.
One of the things that I read, a quote from you, when facing adversity in the ring, you said, in fights, you remember when it was cold and you had nothing to eat.
Exactly.
And somehow that motivates you or gets you past moments of adversity within the matches themselves. Can you describe a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yes, of course. You know, boxing gets tough, man. Sometimes you get hit with a hard shot. Sometimes you get hit and people don't even know, but you know. Like sometimes I ask my wife, she's here, I'm like, yeah, that shot he caught me with, that was hard. I didn't show it, but that was hard. And you just think back to yourself, you're like, can't really feel my legs. Where they at? Like, well, you better remember that night you didn't have nothing to eat. If you can get through that, you better be able to get through this. So
it's kind of comparing the challenges. The challenge of being homeless and not having anything to eat doesn't compare
it's
to
funny.
what you experience.
It's actually funny. Like you talk about the amateur. Like when I won the 2016, I think that's the year when I won the SoCal. I actually was homeless when I did that. Like I was winning a lot of tournaments against these fighters. They didn't even know. Like I was coming off the street to come fight. So when I went in there, I went with a whole different attitude. I'm like, this guy, he was in the bed last night. I got to show him what I felt last night.
So a couple things. Let me shout out a few people on the chat. Elijah Dumas says, GOAT.
Oh, yes, sir. Elijah Dumas. That's my homeboy. How you doing, man?
Shout out to Elijah. Thanks for joining us. Nancy Rodriguez of the WBC says, hi, guys. Hi, Nancy. And Eddie Rodriguez, senior matchmaker extraordinaire here in Southern California. Shout out to Eddie Rodriguez. We're here with Nate Weston, who is describing to us some of his experience in transitioning from the greater Atlanta area to Los Angeles.
Exactly. And also talking about Elijah Dumas that he's here. He's one of the guys that helped me get through those hard spots. You know, one of my best friends. He's a fighter as well. He's going to be coming up. You'll hear about him. When I'm in them tough spots, I'm like, hey, I need $20, man. That's what I'm going to.
There you go. You know, I think one thing that people, us in media, we have more of an advantage to get to know fighters, where people outside of media, people that watch boxing on television and whatnot, they hear stories, you know, because every fighter has a story.
Yes.
Every fighter comes from somewhere. They have a story, whether it's a good story, whether it's a bad story, whether it's a struggle, whether they were born with the silver spoon in their mouth, you know, they have a story. Yeah. And I think that it just needs to be brought to the attention of the boxing fans out there in the boxing community that every fighter has a story, man. I mean, if you take somebody like Nate, for instance, this guy came with his last pennies to California to fight for his dream, to try to become a world champion one day. I mean, living in the car, not knowing where he's going to eat, not knowing where he's going to sleep, not knowing where he's going to shower, and having to struggle and having to fight. I mean, these are the types of stories that need to be brought out there, man, because I commend you for everything that you've done and everything that you're doing, because me personally, mentally, I would have probably I would have been broke. Yes, you know, seriously, like it's a lot to put on to a fighter, especially going into that ring and then having to focus not just on everything going on in life, but having to focus on that opponent that's in front of you. So all these fighters that go through this struggle, man, I commend you guys, because you know, you've heard it in the past, man. Boxing's a poor man's sport.
It is.
It really is. It's not like football. It's not like basketball. It's not like baseball. It's not a team sport. You can't blame somebody when you lose. You blame yourself. Either you get to that next level or you don't. And sometimes that struggle can just be a tremendous burden on some of these fighters out here, man. So I commend anybody, you know, that has to go through these struggles and you know, and it's our job to get this story out there. So that's, you know, why Sean and I, a lot of times we do this and we bring these fighters in we bring everybody in, man. We've had Jesse Vargas, we've had world champions, we've had Danny Roman in here, and then we've had people like Nate and people that are just developing, red boxing guys, you know, because of the fact that we want to give everybody the platform to commend you guys, man. So yes, sir, I commend you for everything in your hustle right now, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Nancy agrees. She says, yep, every fighter has a story, and of course they do. Nate has a story which is, you know, I don't want to say unparalleled, but filled with a lot of adversity and a lot of triumph as well. You've experienced a lot of success.
Exactly.
And once you came to California, you found elite competition. You also found some elite sparring. What are some of the examples of sparring partners that you have encountered in your way?
Man, I've sparred Jaime Munguia. I've sparred Triple G out here. There's another guy. His name's Angel. Can't really pronounce his last name, but he's pretty good. I've been down to Roberts Garcia gym a little bit. What's the medalist? He won bronze. What's his name? Forget his name. He won it from Mexico.
Oh, Lindolfo. Was it Lindolfo?
It wasn't Lindolfo. I think he's a weight class above him, but I think it's Missiel.
Oh, Missiel.
Yeah, I sparred him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's elite out here.
And something that I find interesting is you have on your record one draw, a majority draw,
yes,
to John Sanchez Leon.
Yes.
And I bring that up because you actually were sparring partners several times with John Sanchez Leon, correct?
Yes.
And this is really interesting and unique because in your circumstance where you're a young, undefeated fighter and he was in the same position, you guys decided to both take the extra risk, knowing that you know each other as well as you do from sparring and things like that.
Exactly.
And you decided to make a fight of it, and that ended in a majority draw.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the reasons, or how do you rationalize taking that step at that juncture in your career?
Well, everybody knows when you're in the boxing game, if you don't have a long amateur career, it's hard to get signed. So at that point in time, they said, hey, we got this fighter, John Leon. I was like, hey, man, that's kind of my buddy. It was like, if you beat him, Golden Boy saying they'll sign you. They waved a little, in front of me. So I'm like, man, I think at the time I was like 3-0, still struggling. Money's kind of tight. I'll take it. Let's go. And John, he's not no hoe, so he's not going to back down. So I'm pretty sure they printed this in him with the same thing, and he said, hey, I'll take the fight. And if you look at John's record, he was fighting undefeated fighters all the way up, so.
Yeah, that whole little clique, man, with you and your boy Ricky, and Shark, Pablo Rubio, and John Leon. And then when Big Shark told me about the fight, he says, I'm matching up John. I said, yeah, he's got a tough fight against an undefeated kid. I'm like, who? He tells me, I'm setting him up with Nate, man. I'm like, what?
Why?
Yeah, I was like, that night I remember Shark says, you going to the fight? I said, nah, I'm not going, man. I'm not, because I know you personally. I know John personally when he first got here from Colombia, and it was just kind of like, I couldn't believe that Shark did that.
Honestly, it was kind of the same energy between me and John because, like I said, in the sport we have a lot of respect, and every time me and John sparred, it was always that respect, and it was kind of weird. So I felt like both sides were kind of pushing it in a way that we didn't feel that way. I don't think we wanted to fight each other at that time. I feel like me and John, that fight should have probably happened a little bit later for a lot more money.
Yeah.
Especially at that time in our careers. It's too young to put two young fighters, in like that.
I don't even think John's been back in the ring since then, man.
He's been
I think maybe one time.
I think once or twice, but then he hasn't really been in again.
Yeah, I haven't really seen John around lately, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the thing that's most interesting about it is it's not uncommon for professionals to come across former sparring partners or people who they competed against as amateurs.
Exactly.
But in your case, I mean, we're talking about, only a very short period of time removed and two guys who are young in their career. So you should have a degree of familiarity. There's always instances where you see professionals go, oh, but that was in the amateurs, or but that sparring was 10 years ago. Yeah. But in this case, it wasn't 10 years ago. It wasn't in the amateurs.
About a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. So did you guys, did you feel familiar, I guess, with how that was going to go? Or did it?
But the thing, it's crazy because you can spar. Like I tell guys this all the time. Like, you can spar with anybody. You can feel good about the sparring, but the fight is totally different. Don't get confused. Because that guy could be tired that day. He could be going through something. You never know. Because the John that I sparred, because I felt like I got the better of it in sparring. Don't tell John I said that. But when we fought, he was totally different.
It's funny that you say that too, because I'm in a few boxing groups, man, and on social media, Facebook boxing groups and whatnot. And it's funny, sometimes you get these leaked videos from sparring, right? Mm-hmm. And then you just get the masses of people talking shit like, oh, he whooped his ass in sparring. Oh, so-and-so. Yeah. Listen up, guys. It's sparring, man. It's sparring. If you've never been to a gym and like caught sparring live, there's a rhyme and a reason behind it, man. A lot of it is teaching. So you might go, the first round is teaching where you're going to learn. And then the second round might be go fully at it. The third round is we're going to learn from what we've learned from that second round. Mm-hmm. Then the fourth round, you're going to go at it again. Mm-hmm. So that video clip may have been at a round where they're actually going at it on purpose to try to see where they can improve from their mistakes. The whole sparring's not like that, man. It's set up 3 rounds hard, 3 rounds soft. Phases. Let's learn, let's teach, depending on what the coaches want for you guys and what your trainers want for you guys. So when you see these little leaked video clips, because a lot of times you go into a gym, it's like, all right, everybody put your phone in the basket and grab your phone after sparring's done. Exactly. Because they don't want it recorded out of respect for the fighters, out of respect for the trainers. Mm-hmm. But sometimes those videos do get leaked, and it's just sparring. It doesn't mean shit, man. It really doesn't. I mean, it means stuff to the fighters to help them progress and help them learn. But as far as who would win in a fight,
exactly.
That shit goes out the window, man.
It reminds me of like when Leo sent the cruise at Abner Mars. When they were used to sparring growing up, and then Abner Mars was like, "Yeah, I beat him up in sparring," and Leo's like, "Yeah, I'm different." And then obviously we saw how the fight went.
So yeah, it goes a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
The boy Ricky's watching. What's going on, Ricky?
What's going on, Rick? What's happening?
Oh man.
Yeah, so, I met Rick and you about 2 years ago, man.
Exactly.
On the former podcast that I used to do, back in the days of Redlands for NBC Sports. But
don't be plugging old podcasts, bro. No, I'm just
kidding. They're long gone, man. This is just boxing live now.
I'm just messing around. I have love for all the other podcasts. Ricky Cuellar, what's up, fellas? What's up, Nate? What's up, Ricky?
How you doing, man?
Yeah.
I think we got the most viewers ever now, man. We got about 57 people plugged in right now, so it's going good. Thank you for sharing, Nancy.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
So, January 2018, I saw an interview with you where you were talking about the pound-for-pound greats in the sport. And the 2 people that you had named as the greats at that time were Terrence Crawford and Lomachenko.
Yes.
And you had also set a kind of unofficial goal for yourself to be one amongst the pound-for-pound greats within 5 years.
Yes.
But the thing that I thought was interesting about that is you said you want to be known as someone special in the ring and out of the ring.
Yes.
And I really want to ask you about that second part. So when you say you want to be known as something special out of the ring, what are the types of things that you're hoping to achieve when you think about that plan you created for yourself?
My plan is to get back to the communities, really highlight on things that we really don't talk about, like immigration, going to the communities, hunger, I'm homeless. So you want to tackle things like that. Single mothers that's going through it. Single fathers is going through it. Just really want to tackle stuff people don't talk about, especially immigration. Being here in California, growing up, and the culture that I'm growing up in is like, hey, you only mess with this type of people. Only mess with black people. Just keep it 100.
Yeah.
When I came here, everybody that helped me was Hispanics. And it shook me. And my wife, she's from Michoacan. I was really exposed to a lot of things about immigration, especially with Donald Trump and all this stuff going on. It really blew my mind, the struggles that Hispanics go through that nobody talks about. And that really impacted me. So if I'm in a position able, financially to do things about it, I want to do that.
And that's not to get on the political bandwagon here or whatnot, but that's one thing people don't understand. The culture, the Hispanic culture, when you come from different communities, when you're sitting back on a farm in Iowa or Ohio or, somewhere in the Midwest, and you just don't have the type of cultures that they have in Los Angeles, which is the majority Hispanic culture out here, right?
Exactly.
We're not all bad people.
Exactly.
And just like every race, just like the Caucasian race, the black race, the Latino race, we all have our bad apples.
We do.
But you know what, man? There's a lot of good in every race out there, man. And especially out here in Los Angeles with this Hispanic community. I have a question for you, man. So recently there was an issue with the entourage of Clarissa Shields.
Yes.
And it's come out now that it was her brother
that
struck this man that was talking shit, 71-year-old man, Bashir Ali.
Yes.
Right? He was hit, he was knocked out, had some facial fractures, taken to the hospital, and retaken back to the hospital this week because he had bleeding on the brain.
Yes.
How important is it for you to have a strong team around you? And like you said, the banter is going to be there. The shit talking is going to go back and forth between fighters.
This happens.
But how important is it to make sure that you have a solid team around you when it's time for a big fight?
Oh, it's the most important thing. Your team is everything. Your team is everything. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a fighter.
Okay, because with that being said, I guess what I'm trying to get, the point I'm trying to get to is that how important is it as a boxer, though, that you take personal responsibility? Because for me, I think it would have been important that she came out instead of getting on social media and ranting about she didn't know what was going on, leave her alone, this and that. Take responsibility for, hey, there were some actions that were taken. I don't condone it. This is what happened, and say I'm sorry. How important is it as a fighter to own up to your responsibilities and actually apologize for that?
Exactly. I feel like it's 100% your responsibility. I remember one time when I was young, getting in trouble, and an officer pulled me over, and he's like, "Oh, you did this and this." I was like, "Well, I didn't know that was a law." He was like, "Well, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. You might say somebody in your team did something. Hey, I didn't know they did that. That's not an excuse. It's your team. Take ownership for it. Say, hey, I didn't want it to be this way. This is what happened. We apologize. But it is your responsibility as a fighter."
And the reason I bring that up is because I recently seen a post by Jill Diamond of the WBC where she was basically advocating for Clarissa in not so many words, where she was saying, hey, you know what, she's had to overcome a lot. She's heartbroken, but she basically comes from the gutter, so it's not her fault. With all due respect, that's what basically she's saying is, look, you guys are jumping on her, you're giving her a hard time, but you guys don't know her struggle. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to. Every fighter has a story, man. Every fighter has a struggle. You can't use that as an excuse, man. Just because you're coming from the streets, or just because you don't have money, just because you're struggling, there's a lot of other fighters struggling, and that doesn't give you the excuse to sit there and try, or anybody else the excuse to make excuses for these people, for anybody, no matter what race. This has nothing to do with race, but just the fact of how people act. And what I'm trying to get to is, we had another incident last night, where because of actions of certain people, it turned into chaos.
Exactly.
And it's bad. You have to stop making excuses when things happen. When bad things happen, let people take personal accountability. Let them take personal responsibility, whether it be their manager, whether it be the promotion company, whether it be a sanctioning body. You have to have some type of code of ethics, and you have to crack down on these people. I know the WBC is big on the code of ethics right now. So, it's kind of like they need to start enforcing it, because things are just getting worse. Things are getting out of control. It started back, this has gone on forever, from when Mike Tyson said he wanted to eat people's kids.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, no, I thought I had somebody chiming in. It goes back to when Mike Tyson said he wanted to eat people's kids, but it just seems like recently, with the Gary Russell thing, with the Deontay Wilder thing, with the Clarissa thing, there's real no accountability for the actions people are taking, what the camps are doing or whatnot. These entourages are getting bigger, and it seems like it's just harder to control.
Yeah, speaking on the Gary Russell thing, man, that was whack. That was whack, dog. And personally, I had a lot of emotion. I was even telling my wife when it happened. That was whack, dog. As a grown man, the whole thing was whack. The whole persona, just the energy of it was whack. And I just want to make that 100% clear. That was whack. That you don't do that, dog. Like, especially, you just don't do it, man. Like, it's whack.
To an ailing old man.
People can say what they want to say about Leo Santa Cruz, man, but that kid is one, and Leo personally.
I know Leo personally.
He's one of the most humblest boxers around.
Like, man, it's so many ways. If you want to get into, fight with a fighter, there's so many different ways, so many different avenues he could have went. You don't do that, man. That's whack. Because then that's how, stuff happens where you can't reverse the action of, because something like that, personally, me, if he would have did that to my father and I was there, I don't know how I'd react. How do you react to something like that? That's so disrespectful. It's past disrespectful.
Yeah, I think we've had a conversation on this show multiple times, which is, is there an unofficial line? Is there somewhere where you would say, in the promotion of a fight? And my position in the past has always been, if you are in promoting the fight and it results in more dollars for the fighters, then I'm kind of all for it. Only some of these things are not really just in the promotion of the fight. It's not the same as just saying, I'm going to eat your kids, for example, right? Like, you're talking about someone who decided to lie to protect a family member or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And that is her responsibility. Just as an adult, she has to take that on, So I think that, and you can't pass that on to anyone, regardless of what her circumstances are. If she lied, and that's just how it has to be.
Are you set up for call-ins today?
Yeah, I'm set up for call-ins.
What's your call-in number?
You have my number. I don't know what it is.
You don't know what the
just look at your phone. Get it over there. Yeah, I don't call myself.
I know you don't, man. But I need to call
myself. You find the number. But I think that the circumstances are different. So, for instance, last night we may as well bring it up now. At the top of the hour, we mentioned a little bit of a melee that ensued at an event last night.
Is it your regular cell number? Or is
no. It's the Just Boxing number. So last night there was an event where Ronald the American Dream Johnson, who was taking on Sergio Ramirez in a rematch, there was a disputed decision at the end of that fight. So it's safe to say that a number of the crowd who wasn't there in support of Ronald Johnson felt as though Sergio Ramirez had won the fight.
Exactly.
And someone took it upon themselves to throw something into the ring, a drink into the ring. Much of which hit myself and the individual next to me, because we were close to the red corner at the time. I have no idea how much of it actually hit Ronald Johnson or his team, which incited sort of some back and forth between Ronald Johnson and the crowd, which then resulted in something else being thrown in the ring. And after that, he jumped out of the ring and he went after that individual. And it's challenging because each side in this instance is going to point at the other side and say, well, they shouldn't have thrown the drink, and other people are going to say, well, he shouldn't have jumped out of the ring. And the truth is they're both right, or they're both wrong, however you want to look at it. Both people made mistakes in this. Ronald Johnson is the one who's almost certainly going to have to pay for those mistakes because he jumped out of the ring. But it's also very difficult because I understand that in any other circumstance, this would not be acceptable. Yeah. If you were just a man at a bar or anywhere else and somebody else threw a drink in your face and you reacted in that way, people would find it tolerable. Yeah. But because it's a professional athlete conducting themselves in that way at a sporting event where there's children and there's other people, it's perhaps less tolerable. And you think back to, for instance, the Malice at the Palace is the one that I was talking about with
Ron
you.
Artest.
Where Ron Artest got pegged in the face with a beer and then jumped out into the stands, right?
Exactly.
And you could say that, yes, in any other circumstance, if you were just there and you threw a beer in Ron Artest's face, we would say that's acceptable. Yeah, you can hit that guy.
Exactly.
Right? But I think last night it was, it's unfortunate that everything unfolded in that way, and each entity is going to end up having to take accountability for their decisions. The thing that's unfortunate is the guy who threw the drink most likely just went home.
Yeah,
right.
He's gone.
Ronald Johnson is going to have almost certainly some form of penalty for this.
Here's my thing, man. Red really doesn't have a sanctioning body behind it. They have the GBO. I know the WBC is cracking down. The West Coast PR, I know you're tuning in. I know you're watching. So I'm going to put the chokehold on you right now, Nancy. What is the WBC going to do when it's your guys' champions to make things better? When it's somebody like Wilder, somebody like Clarissa Shields, somebody like Gary Russell, that all have WBC titles. How can the WBC and Mortal step up to put a chokehold? I know they started the ethics, the code of ethics, but it just seems like lately this has been something that's snowballing. It showed again last night. Of course, it wasn't a WBC sanctioned fight. Okay, I think I have her calling in right now. She's calling me directly. Here we go.
Just covering your ass.
Nancy.
Hey.
Oh, wrong Nancy. I'll call you back. This is the work, Nancy. Text me.
Oh, my goodness. Call this phone.
Yes.
Anyways.
It's a different. I have two Nancy Rodriguez's on my phone.
What a flub that is. Oh, here we go. I've got her.
Is she calling in? Oh, look. She's calling in.
There we go.
Oh, I picked up and then she ended. Give me a call back, Nancy. Anyways, to answer Anthony Garcia's question in the meantime, where he says, Sean, did you get sucker punched like Ruckus did? I didn't. I was hit with the drink. That was intended for Ronald Johnson, but I did not get punched, and I did see that, unfortunately, Ruckus looked to be directly in the middle of the fray, and I wish him all the best. Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey.
Is this the right
hear me?
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, WBC Nancy. Welcome to Just Boxing
Hey.
Live.
Hey, how are you guys? Hey, Nate.
How
Nice
you
to
doing?
see you.
Nice to hear you.
You guys have met before, correct?
Yes, we
At
have.
the WBC
You went
office?
to the office. Yeah, I think you were with Ponce de Leon, right, Nate? At the time.
At the time, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But to answer your question, Anthony, I think you know me really well, and I'm against all of this. I understand that all of this is prize fighting, and a lot of the athletes, the fighters that are doing this, are the ones that are paid the most money and make the most money for shows, which is why it upsets me the most. And Errol Spence, for example, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was drinking or not, but if he was, Anthony, you already know how I feel about that.
Yeah,
If these fighters keep on being forgiven for being bad examples in society, then these things are going to continue happening over and over.
You take, for example, Nancy, David Benavidez, okay? Who tested positive for cocaine, as we all know, but he's come back and he's did everything he was supposed to do. He took the classes, he went to NA, he cleaned himself up, and now he's world champion again, and he hasn't turned back, and hopefully he won't ever make that mistake again. But look at how much of a big example he's been compared to some of these people like Clarissa Shields, who can't even make an apology for her brother. That's the point that I'm getting to. And like you said, if she wants to be the face of women's boxing, which is struggling right now,
Facts.
she needs to step up and not just have people like Mark Taffet write her, her letters for her, but she has to basically step up and make an apology, because that's what fans want. I'm looking at it more as a boxing fan than as somebody that's in boxing media, and looking at it as the way somebody would look at it if they just watch the sport on a daily basis. And it's not just with Clarissa, because I don't want people to think that I'm just focusing on her, but just in general, when these fighters make these mistakes, they've got to step up and start, having a little bit of accountability on themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I have a lot of respect for Clarissa for everything that she's done. But last week you said it exactly the way I would have loved to hear it. Someone in my family made this mistake. I'll take responsibility for it even, but something where she owns up to it, but hiding from it and having people around her hide it as well, as if she wasn't involved whatsoever. She wasn't going to get her brother wasn't going to get a bracelet. Just, how hard it is to get those credentials, you guys.
Yeah.
Nobody gets a bracelet just like that. So for him to have a bracelet, someone had to have given it to him to be in that area. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but in that case, I would have respected more if she would have owned up to it.
Yeah, and that I think that goes down to too, as far as like
Oh wait, and I do want to say that I was being threatened. I don't know if they know that I'm the owner of Supreme Boxing, but I was being threatened that if we didn't remove the post, that we were going to be sued.
Yeah,
So we had to remove a lot of the posts that had to do with that incident.
Post related to the incident, just to clarify?
So the day it happened, right, I had people on the ground in Detroit. I knew what happened. Mm-hmm. I had posted that it was somebody from Clarissa's entourage that hit this man. Mm-hmm. Within 5 minutes, we were getting calls from Showtime, from her manager, and from Clarissa herself, stating that she was going to sue us for defamation of character because she didn't know what was going on. She wasn't in the quote-unquote parameter of the situation, and she had nothing to do with it, and neither did anyone from her team. Maybe he wasn't part of her team, but it was her brother. So there was a lot of banter back and forth between ourselves, Showtime, and Clarissa that day because of what was being reported. But I actually waited until CBS, which is Showtime's sister station, reported it to put it up. Even though I knew as soon as it happened, what happened, who did it, where he was, he already was arrested across the street inside of the school. I knew all that same day. I was on the phone with Nancy, letting Nancy know, hey, it was her brother. He ran from the situation. Dude hit his face on the concrete. There's blood everywhere. This was before he was even in the hospital. I was on the phone with Nancy letting her know what was going on. I waited till CBS posted it to repost something that CBS did, and then I was threatened with the lawsuit. This is the first time you guys are hearing of this because I just didn't feel comfortable saying it on the air, but now that she's brought it up, that's what happened. And it's just like, take responsibility. We all have people with mental issues. We all have problems. We all have family members that act a fool. We do. We really do.
We all do.
I have a brother that has mental issues, and you know what? If he does something, I'm going to be the first one to say, hey, I'm sorry. Exactly. I apologize. He knocked dude out. What do you want me to? I'm sorry.
And I think it's important as well for people that surround you to know, because what Clarissa's doing right now is monumental. They have to know what she's doing is not just regular. They have to respect that.
Exactly. And that's where she needs to step up and understand how many people are watching her. Exactly. How many little girls are looking up to people like her. How many kids from the ghetto are looking up to her saying, look, if she could be a gold medalist and she could come from somewhere, from the streets, whether you want to be a role model or not. And you've talked about this, Sean. You still have those eyes on you. You still have little girls looking up to you that run around talking about, I want to be Clarissa Shields.
Thanks.
And it doesn't matter what race. It doesn't matter that Clarissa's black. Because you have probably every little girls from every nationality running around being that. As a kid, 7 years old, 10 years old, I'm running around talking about, I'm going to be Mike Tyson. Trying to knock people out. I didn't care that Mike Tyson was black. Shit, Mike Tyson was knocking people out. And I want to be like Mike Tyson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when Deontay Wilder, what was his comment last year or earlier this year about
he wanted to catch a body, that it was his dream to kill somebody.
That. And Gary Russell as well. They didn't even apologize, and no action was taken against them as well. So
can you speak a little bit about about the code of ethics then? That I know that it's starting. I know Mauricio has talked about it. I know there are some bylaws now in the WBC rules. There's some bylaws that have been put in.
No, well, the rules have been there since Don Jose was alive. Because of an incident where he fell off of it was a weigh-ins, and I forgot which fight it was. But ever since then, Don Jose Sulaiman always heard this noise in his ear because he hit his head with a crazy code of ethics, a crazy thing that happened there. I forgot what it was. I'll look for it, Anthony. So it's been happening, but it wasn't really enforced. It wasn't enforced as much as it should have, and then Mauricio wants to enforce it now, but the fans don't want it. It's like Sean said, either both of them are right or both of them are wrong, right, Sean? So what do you do when the fans want to see this? They want to see the fighters, screaming at each other and disrespecting each other. But I think there's a line that shouldn't be crossed, which is when you deal with family, like with what happened with Leo's dad. That was just like Nate said, it's whack. It's disrespectful. Most of us here in LA know Don Jose, and we know that he could have died like 3 years ago, but he's been struggling, going through chemo and surviving. And for someone to come and do that to him, that's humiliating. Why doesn't Gary Russell come out and say why he really doesn't fight Leo? Why? Because he has brittle hands. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think my point before, it's difficult to extend it to people who are just talking. That's one of the challenges, is because, to your point, Stax, what you're talking about in terms of like eating someone's children, or Deontay Wilder saying that he wants to do these things, is difficult to extend it to what people say in the promotion of an event. But anytime that there's altercations in particular, like in these situations, we're talking about an altercation with Clarissa Shields' team and the opposing team, and we're also talking about her conduct in the aftermath of that altercation. Specifically, was she truthful or was she not truthful in terms of what the circumstances were? Mm-hmm. With last night, we're talking about Ronald Johnson jumping into a thing of fans. We're talking about fans assaulting, effectively, Ronald Johnson, right? So in these situations, it's almost certainly both sides could have conducted themselves better. They're either both right or they're both wrong in this example. In those two examples, like, for instance, I can't say that the opposing coach deserved to be punched. I can say he probably could have conducted himself better at the weigh-in.
Correct.
Right, and I think that's a fair statement. That doesn't mean that someone deserves
to
be hauled off and punched.
I have to agree with John on that, because even though he got hit, he was going overboard calling the other people monkeys, and
Absolutely.
there could be people that snap. There's people that can snap when you call them. Imagine, Anthony, someone calls you a wetbag. What if you snap and you punch them or something?
Yeah, and it's the same thing I was saying earlier with the beer. We hold athletes to a higher standard because we have to, but in a lot of circumstances, particularly with being hit with a drink, for instance, if you're at a bar and that happened, we would completely understand if you hauled off and hit someone.
Yeah, if you fight somebody because they hit you with the beer, exactly. And like you said, we do hold them at a higher standard.
Yeah, because we have to.
Yes, because we have to.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the problem is it's people like the athlete who end up paying in those circumstances.
And that's what we talked about off camera.
You'll pay every time. Right?
It's always the people that fire back. But you still have to have responsibility and apologize. Like Ronald Johnson, for instance, is going to have to come out and say, look, I made a bonehead move. Shouldn't have never happened. Apologize, get it over with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that won't be the extent of it. Almost certainly he's still going to have to pay
I think California is done with him. He's definitely going to lose his license in California for a while. We're going to move on real quick, but Nancy, I want to keep you on the line because last night we had another tragedy. Of course, Patrick Day hasn't passed away. Our prayers are with him right now. Last night, he was knocked down 3 times. He was knocked down in the 4th round, the 8th round. Then he was knocked completely out in the 10th round. He hit his head really hard on the canvas, lost consciousness, never regained consciousness. They gave him oxygen, took him out on the gurney, out of the ring. They had the physicians there, and I think that might have been what saved his life. He still didn't have consciousness, going to the hospital, started having seizures, then went into emergency brain surgery. He's still in a coma. Is this something that's going to be brought up at the convention as far as the safety of these fighters with all these recent tragedies that we've had in the ring lately?
Yes, definitely. We're going to before the Spence Porter fight. When was that? 2 weeks ago. We had a meeting for the boxing. It's UCLA, and it's a nutritionist, the brain surgeon, so many people together trying to figure out how we're going to help these fighters not get that hurt in the ring. I mean, it's the hurt business. It's a combat sport. You can't take the punches out. But we are going to have on October 22nd, we do have the medical meeting with UCLA. We have representatives coming from there. Then we have it's called WBC Safety Task Force. I'll send you something, Anthony, so you can talk about it on next week. But we're definitely looking into all of that. I'm sorry, hold on. I need to pull over, you guys, real quick.
No problem.
Hold on. But I'll send you what I have, and you too, Sean. It's a great thing that we're doing with UCLA, but we're actually going to have some fighters. And Nate, if you would be up to it, we're going to have these new mouthpieces that UCLA are giving us that you could use in sparring or even in fights, where it has sensors, and those sensors will be able to tell the doctors how those punches are affecting you, how much can you handle, how much can your brain actually handle. When it comes to sparring, because a lot of the damage to the brain doesn't even happen in a fight. It happens during sparring because fighters love to spar.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
I want to ask Nate about this because you actually have a quote that's really relevant, I think, to this that I pulled from one of your interviews. So the first thing you said, and I think this is important for context, you said, I'm an animal, and I mean that in the meanest way possible. I come from the pits, right? And this is about your position when it comes to stepping in the ring with an opponent. But you go on to explain that it doesn't have anything to do with hurting your opponent. You said it's not about hurting the other guy. It's about me versus me.
Exactly.
So in situations like this where you see a fighter who's truly hurt, I think it's fair to say it's not really the intention, although there is, it is a combat sport.
Exactly.
And we've had other fighters sit here and say, yeah, I've scored knockouts where, I was concerned for the opponent. Do you have concern for your opponent in certain situations and can you comment on the fact that what you mean when you say, for instance, it's not about hurting the other guy?
Of course. So my last fight, I had a situation like that. I was fighting a guy, and it was getting very brutal. and his body was swaying everywhere. And I'm looking at the referee, and I'm saying, "Are you going to stop this?" And every fighter has that in their heart. Don't get us confused. Some guys say, "No, I don't feel that." They're lying. Every guy has it. You can see the guy. You can see his face. You can see his body language. It's like, man, he's getting roughed up right now. But in the nature of the sport, I can't really stop, because if I stop and he gets the opportunity to do it to me, he will. But when I go into the ring, I never have an intention of, I want to see this guy killed. I want to see this guy injured. He can't continue his life. I want him to go right back home, be right back with his family, nothing missing from him. But when I say it's me versus me, I'm looking at it as a competition thing, as a competitor.
And I
Well
think
said.
that's what most people feel. I know they had that situation like last night with Anthony Sims, where he was completely dominating his opponent, and he looked over to the referee a few times and was like, "Stop the
Do
fight!
your job."
Stop the fight!"
You could see compilations of a lot of great fighters doing that. Roy Jones Jr.,
Jones,
Manny
yeah.
Pacquiao, yeah, a lot of guys who are pleading with referees to stop contests.
Well, Nancy, thank you for calling in. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon and calling in. And
Thank you, guys.
hopefully we'll be hearing back from you and getting information from you from the convention. You got our emails. You got my number personally. So, send us everything you got coming from Cancun. And you guys have a safe
For
trip
sure,
out there.
for sure.
Thank you,
I leave
Nancy.
early. I leave on Friday because I'm in the ratings committee. So make sure to tune in, because that gets really heated with all the fighters that will be there who wants to be in the top 15. So I'll keep you guys updated.
Nate said he wants to join the clean boxing program.
Yeah.
So,
Get
so he can
his email. Get his email. Send it to me, and I'll email him the forms tomorrow morning.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Okay.
Nancy.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Nancy, for joining in. So we're here, obviously, with Nate. There were some heavy topics that took place there, and I do want to lighten the mood a little bit. There is a segment that we do on this show called Stumped Stacks.
Uh-huh.
I just put the D on it because I always get you.
Stump.
I get you every time. No, Stump Stacks. Now, let me explain the way that this works. This is a segment where we try to stump stacks with boxing facts. What I do is I pull facts on our guests, in this case, Nate Weston, and I relay them to Stacks. I also include one that is made up, and it's Stacks' job to find the one that's made up. Now, this is going to be especially difficult for me this week, so I want everyone to know that Stacks has very recently, if you've not read it already, posted an article to Supreme Boxing. So you've done your research and you've had interviews. I imagine you guys have talked
Yes.
with Nate.
I don't know him. I've never met
And
this
you're,
guy.
and you're very familiar with his background. So I imagine that I have a tall task. But in order to help me in this task, I have made a change to this, and I've incorporated a fourth fact.
Fake
there
news.
There are four. There are four this time. Traditionally, we only do 3 facts. I've done 4 to make it a little bit harder for you, since I imagine you know some of these offhand. Are you ready to play Stump Stacks?
Let's go.
Okay, Nate, your job in this is to put on your best poker face.
Okay.
And also, you will let us know if the fact that he picks is true or not true.
All right, facts.
Okay. Poker face. So, number 1. While boxing fans are acquainted with Nate 100 Weston, Nate's Instagram followers are also treated to life lessons from his more cerebral persona, Nate the Intellectual. Finding success in California boxing scene, this past December, Nate began a new birthday tradition wherein he throws $1,000 in cash into the air, which he does outdoors. Before Nate's tenure as a professional boxer, he first found success as a high school football player, where he set 2 records in the same game. One for returning 2 kicks for a touchdown, and one for the longest scoring play in 85 years of the school's history. And number 4, had he not joined the California boxing scene, it's likely that Nate would instead earn his living in industrial plastics, given his relationship with longtime family friend who works as the operations manager at Central One, a plastics manufacturer in Fayetteville, Georgia. Which one is fake?
What was number 2?
Number 2 was the $1,000, the birthday tradition.
And what was number 1 again?
Number 1 was...
They just kind of ran in order. You didn't say 1, 2, or 3. You didn't.
Did they all sound like part of one
Yeah,
continuous fact?
it sounded like
Man,
one
you're
big
get-
ass
you're getting,
fact,
wor-
man.
You're getting worse at I thought this would be easy. I
No,
thought I
man.
was just going to read through it and you would tell me the fake one. Didn't you just do an
No,
interview
man.
with him?
Yeah, I did.
my
but
goodness.
I know he throws $1,000.
Do you want me to read them again with the 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Just go 1. What is 1?
Okay, number 1. While boxing fans are acquainted with Nate 100 Weston, Nate's Instagram followers are also treated to life lessons from his more cerebral persona, Nate the Intellectual.
No, that's fake, man.
Nate?
That's actually true.
You lose.
Oh man, damn man. So what was
Got
fake?
him.
Fake was 4 then.
What's number 4?
Fake was for the plastic.
The plastic, yeah.
God damn, Nate the intellectual. I never even seen that. Nate the
Oh,
intellectual.
man.
He don't come out that much, but he come out.
Man, yeah, that was, you got me on that one.
One more.
You lose.
There we go. Got him.
Got me.
Got him.
You had to work for that one, bro.
I did, dude. I was literally still looking at stuff
I'm actually
this morning.
impressed. I'm impressed.
You're impressed with that one?
Yeah, not
He
many
studies,
people know
man.
about Nate the election.
on that subject, though, let's talk about Nate 100 Weston, because this, what you have on your shirt here, the 100, how did that come into being? It's actually, I think, generally speaking, it's catchy. The shirts are cool. Like, where did all this come from?
So when I was picking my name, I saw that a lot of fighters always had like the one or, you know, sweet sugar or this, that. I was like, has anybody ever had a number? I was like, no, I never heard somebody with a number. And it's like, what number would I choose if I chose a number? I was like, oh, 100, because that's how I keep it.
Keep it 100.
Awesome.
You're the second fighter though that I've heard that has that 100.
I'm going to change it now.
Ruben Torres, 100 Torres.
Oh, 100 Taurus, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
It's a little different.
a little
It's a
different.
little
though.
different.
But
Yeah.
then his
Where can we get the shirts? Can we buy those
We will be able to buy those. The website be back up next week.
next week? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool. I'm gonna get my 100 shirt.
So you were out in Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, sir.
Out there visiting family,
Uh-huh.
and had a new baby girl. Congratulations on that,
thank
man.
you so much.
Congratulations, brother.
So you had that out there visiting family, had a couple fights,
Uh-huh.
and then you get a call
Yes.
to come spar with Triple G. So
Triple
you
G.
were up in Big Bear for the last 3 months, basically as Triple G's sparring partner, getting ready for Darren Vinchenko, right?
Yes.
How was that sparring, man? And did Triple G, has he lost a step, man? What do you think, man?
I'm not sure. It was my first time working with him.
Yeah.
But one thing I can say, it was a great experience. Thank you to everybody that was involved with giving me that opportunity. Triple G, he's a very, he's very patient. So in the times when we were sparring, you know, of course he's not. I don't think he's the fastest puncher. You know, no disrespect to him, but I was getting off on him a little bit. But he's patient. He aims his shots. He's very accurate. And that's what I learned from Triple G. He works very hard worker.
And you know what? We noticed that in this fight recently because I know I noticed it. Darren Vinchenko seemed to take the fight to him.
He did.
And it didn't seem like he was slow, but it just seemed like he was methodical and the punches that he wanted to throw on Darren Vinchenko, Triple G wanted to throw on Darren Vinchenko. So, I mean, but that's always been his style. You know,
Always.
he's never been the come forward type fighter unless he got you hurt and he's coming in for a kill.
Exactly.
Usually it's real methodical on his setups, and then once he has you,
He has you.
it's over.
The power is real. Believe that. He hasn't lost that. He may have lost a step, but the power is still there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. With did you watch the fight?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but one of the things that I wanted to point out is that people say he lost a step, which naturally someone may do at the age of 37, even though recovery is kind of something that we specialize in now that we, particularly compared to past generations of boxers, we do more in the way of recovery. I'm sure Triple G does as well,
Exactly.
which extends the career, I think, of men. So, sure, he could lose a step. He's also just fighting better people.
Yeah.
He's just fighting a lot better people.
And that's the one thing I was telling people. Like, people will say this as if the guy he fought, I don't know how to really pronounce his name, Devinchenko.
Yeah.
He's not a bum.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not, exactly.
You know?
And that's what I was telling people. I said, look, man, this guy took Jacobs to distance and lost a split decision to Danny Jacobs.
Split decision.
Right? Just because Triple G didn't look like the boogeyman that everybody thought he was before in the past, where he was just knocking people out,
Exactly.
right? He's still an elite fighter. He's still at least in the top 5 at middleweight. Seriously, if he fights any B or C level competition and he knocks him out, he's going to catch shit online for fighting bums.
Exactly.
And that's just the truth. And that's the truth. That's not me saying these guys are bums. What I'm saying is that's the type of shit he'll catch if he fights these B and C level fighters. He fought somebody at the top level and he still won. Whether I agree with that decision or not, that's my personal opinion. But the facts is that he won that fight.
Exactly.
He took Canelo the distance on 2 fights, right?
You know, that's the thing that I don't understand is people say like, oh, he's washed up, he doesn't have it, all this. He's at least one up with Canelo, like in the sense that they're equally as good as each other.
Exactly.
Like in terms of when they compete against each other. So it's funny because people look at Canelo and they're like, oh man, he's like going on to do great things. He's like going up now to fight Sergey Kovalev, and his career is gonna. And then they look at Triple G, who essentially accomplished the same thing as Canelo did in those two fights.
Exactly.
They accomplished the same thing, but Triple G he's washed up.
Yeah,
he's got to retire.
He got a draw and he got a loss. He got a draw and he got a loss, right?
A draw that is pretty universally understood to be actually a win for Triple G, like 8 rounds to 4. So like he does have a draw. And then he has a loss that is actually a competitive loss,
correct?
Which many people feel like he still won. You can't really do. Like what more? They both accomplished the same thing.
Exactly.
To Canelo Alvarez, his loss is to Canelo Alvarez. Come on.
And then I actually got in an argument with somebody that night about the Devenchenko fight. I was like, Devenchenko gives anybody in the top 10 a great run for their money. I stand by that.
Yeah.
Well, he's already done it twice.
Exactly.
I mean, both those guys were.
Those guys
were in the top 5, maybe. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, like, I mean. You look at it, and a lot of it, I think, you have to attribute it to this concept of the boogeyman doesn't really apply when you have world-class talent in your division.
No.
You can be the boogeyman as you buzz through the division and do that, but once you step up to the other world-class talent in your division, like everybody says, oh, Errol Spence isn't the boogeyman anymore after Sean Porter. He wasn't going to be the boogeyman. Who were these people?
Sean Porter is world-class. When world-class fighters fight world-class fighters, you're not going to see a first or second round knockout.
Like what I wanted
you're
to
not
know,
going to see that.
Who were the people? Where were all these people that thought Errol Spence was going to win by like second round knockout? I didn't hear a single person say that. Nobody thought that Errol Spence was going to come in and just absolutely dust Sean Porter that I've heard.
No.
And if you did think that, okay, that's fine. But
you don't know boxing.
I think that
I thought it was going to be the 9th or 10th. And I told you, I thought Sean was going to take the fight to Earl for 4 or 5 rounds, get tired, and Earl would wear him out. And that still didn't happen.
I'm not saying it's silly to think he would win by KO, but I'm saying more like now people are, he's not the boogeyman. They had to go the distance with Sean Porter. It's like, that's Sean Porter.
Exactly.
Like, what do you mean? Did I miss something? Like, he's a world-class talent. Like, the same thing. He would probably also have a difficult fight with Danny Garcia. He'd have a difficult fight with Keith Thurman because when you get to that level, everybody can hit, everybody can get hit, everybody can fight.
And they know how to adjust. They know what they're looking for. They have world-class trainers. They have world-class people around them watching videotapes, watching YouTubes of these fights, and knowing step by step for 12 rounds every single move that Errol Spence is going to do. When he feints, when he throws, which way he turns, what combinations he throws. Does he throw 1-2-1? Does he throw 1-3-1?
Exactly.
What he does. They spend hours upon hours upon hours knowing every single thing. They call it the sweet science for a reason because it's a science behind it when you get to that level. It's not going in there fighting guys from TJ and knocking them out when you first start to develop a record. This is top level.
Exactly. That's one thing.
These are the fights that you're going to get.
Also in Triple G's camp, that's one thing that you see. Like, you notice the difference. And, like, you can spar down here, you can spar with the guys that come upcoming prospects. But when you step up to that championship level, you can notice it. When you get in the ring, the pressure's different. It feels different. The movements are different. When he's slipping punches, most guys slip punches, they're way over here. Triple G, when he's slipping,
barely missing.
Barely.
Just like
this is top level.
Man, you actually, although you did make a good point that I wanted to bring up as part of this that I saw in a different interview where you said, regardless of someone's record, that every fighter offers different skill sets.
Exactly.
And sometimes a fighter that's not considered very good can give you a tough time. They can give you a challenge of it. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that?
What I mean by that is some guys are very, very awkward. Have you ever seen a guy that can fight and a guy that can't fight each other?
Yeah, sure.
And very early, it looks like the guy that can't fight is like, he's actually doing a little bit. He's in there. But it's the awkwardness of it. He can't fight, but it's the awkwardness of it. So somebody can offer you something you've never seen before because it's so unorthodox. It's kind of like when Ali first came into heavyweight. Nobody saw anything like that until he did it. So it's hard.
Styles make fights, man.
They do.
Styles make fights. You know what? One fight that comes to mind for me is Vernon Forrest and Shane Mosley. Vernon Forrest just has Shane Mosley's number. That's all there was to it.
That's what it was.
It doesn't mean he was a better fighter, or that he was going to go on to accomplish more. Rest in peace, Vernon Forrest. But it's like, styles make fights. Sometimes somebody just has your number.
just
You just can't figure out that style.
Exactly.
And they're gonna beat you.
Yeah, I the reason I bring this up is because we use that term in boxing a lot. Styles make fights, and I actually think your description does a really good job of explaining it, which is essentially there's some guys who are just going to give you fits because they don't work or they don't mesh well with what you expect.
Exactly.
And I think an example that I've used, you use Vernon Forrest, for instance, but if you look at Juan Manuel Marquez and Manny Pacquiao as an example, most people will look at Pacquiao's career at the end of the day and say it far exceeds what Marquez was able to accomplish in his career, but it doesn't change the fact that the two of them are just always going to be competitive.
Always.
Every single time you see them fight, it will be a tough go of it.
Every time.
And I think that's one example of it. So I agree it's the styles make fights, and it's also something that you hear people say about Deontay Wilder is that the punches come from unconventional angles.
Yes.
And so even though you may, do something to block a hook that you would normally do, it doesn't stop Wilder's hook because it's coming from a different trajectory than you're accustomed to.
And the different thing about sparring and fighting, once again, like saying the difference between them, when I'm sparring you, most times we're going to spar probably 4 or 5 times. So I have about 20, 30 rounds to figure you out. In that ring, you got 36 minutes. You better figure it out quick.
So, talking about that, 36 minutes to figure it out. How hard is it to stick to your plan instead of adjusting? How hard is it as a fighter to make your opponent fight your style of fight than it is to try to adjust? Or is it a little bit of both? Do you have to use your style and then adapt to your opponent's style? Do you make him adapt to yours? How do you go into it?
I think the great ones, if the person is giving them a fit, they keep their style and their game plan, but they put a little adjustment to fit that person.
Okay.
A la Floyd Mayweather.
There you go.
Exactly.
His style is always his style, but you can see the game plan
It changes a little bit.
The game plan changes. His style's his style, but the game plan will change.
Real quick, man. Last night, Usyk. Did you watch that? You said you watched it, right?
I watched it. You watched it too?
I watched it as well.
What do you guys think of Usyk stepping up to the heavyweight division?
I'll let you go first, Nate.
I wasn't impressed. Personally, for me, I wasn't impressed. I think Usyk realized last night that the punches up here are a lot more heavy than cruiserweight. That's my, but he still did what he had to do. He got him out in the 7th round. Got to give him credit for that. And we don't know if he was just trying to get rounds, because at some point, it looked like he was just trying to get rounds.
There was a lot of comparison to him, before the fight. I didn't watch the fight last night, but there was a lot of comparison to him, what he's doing and what Evander Holyfield did. Is there a big difference between Usyk style and Holyfield style that you see?
I would say so. I think they're two completely different fighters.
Yeah, I agree. I understand the sentiment that stepping up from cruiserweight and trying to sort of control or dominate the heavyweight division, that's about where the similarities stop to me. I think stylistically, I don't see the same kind of thing. I see all these reports, people saying like, wow, this performance doesn't put the heavyweight division on notice. But I also think, well, what did you expect Usyk to do? Like, it's not like he was down at cruiserweights just blasting people out in 1 and 2 rounds. He's a boxer.
That's his
right?
style.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he comes in and it's essentially it's death by 1,000 cuts. He puts it on you for round after round after round, and eventually you succumb to the craft that is Alexander Usyk. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. He was never in fear of losing that fight. He went in, he dominated from round 1 until he stopped him in round 7 in true Alexander Usyk fashion. And people kind of say, well, that there's nothing to see there for other heavyweights to be afraid of. And that may be true, but I also think, like, did people think he was just going to knock the guy out in round 1 or something? Like, that's not what he does.
I think they did because they heard the hype, but one thing they also have to understand is when you're stepping up to a different weight class, especially in the fashion that he's doing it, you have to go about it a certain way. He hadn't been in the ring for, a year?
Yeah, he had a long layoff, and he never even did that at cruiserweight.
Exactly.
So, like, I'm not sure what the expectation came from, that he was just going to, like, hey, I'm going to put people on notice, like when Deontay Wilder knocked out Dominic Breazeale, I'm just going to knock a guy, like, out of the thing. Like, that's not what he does. He went in, he did what he does. Like, that's what it looks like.
Where do you think he fits in amongst the top heavyweights, Sean?
It's tough, man, because you look at these guys, the top heavyweights today, this is not when, you're stepping up to fight Mike Tyson or even Lennox Lewis or even Vladimir Klitschko. These cats are 6'9". They're 250 pounds.
Athletic.
Yeah, they're athletic. There is so much height and weight advantage from these other people. And Deontay Wilder also, I mean, he's also very tall, even though you can make an argument that him and Usyk probably weigh about the same. Like Deontay Wilder did 2 fights in a row where he weighed in at 215 and 212. But he just has something different. He has the almighty equalizer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it is, and it's not, nobody can get touched by him. How about that? Like Usyk or anybody else, it doesn't matter. So that's not really a specific criticism for Alexander Usyk. It's more saying that I don't think any heavyweight can handle it.
No.
And that's not to say that I think he would beat any heavyweight. No. I think Tyson Fury did well. I think a lot of people make a case that Tyson Fury even won that fight. If you can not get knocked out, you have a good chance, right? Like the same thing with Luis Ortiz. If he can not get knocked out, he has a chance, right? If he doesn't go down or out. But the problem is everybody does. Yeah. Everybody does. If you get touched. Like you look at Usyk last night, and he got touched. He's got the little mouse under his eye. He took a right hand.
He's a big boy, man. I mean, Chaz Witherspoon's a big boy. Like any heavyweight that hits you, it's going to hurt. You're going to feel it.
He took a right hand from Witherspoon, and you look at that, and people are probably going to look at that example, even though it may be the only good punch that Witherspoon landed in 7 rounds. People are going to look at that and go, you know what, man, this guy can't put Wilder away. Yeah. And if Wilder hit him with that right hand, he would be done.
Yeah, he would, right? But it's totally different.
It's very different. So I think it's hard because the other men are so massive, like the Tyson Furies and the Anthony Joshuas of the world. It's hard to see that competition with that style, but he is an elite boxer. I mean, what can I say? The guy has great footwork. He has great footwork.
I tell you,
half of what you do is footwork. Like
I tell you, what's going to be a damn good fight, man, is that fight coming up Friday, man, between was it Vodzik and Better Beef?
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Ooh. What is it? 14-0, 14 KOs.
Yeah, Vojdik and Beterbiev.
Yeah.
Unifying title fight.
A unifying title fight. Both of those guys are killers, man. Yeah. That's gonna be those two Russians are gonna kill each other in that ring. Yeah. That's gonna be probably one of the most brutal fights that boxing fans will see in a long time. I guarantee you, it's probably gonna be fight of the year or up there in contention for fight of the year, along with the first Wilder Fury fight, along with the Joshua Reese fight. There's been some good fights. The Thurman Pacquiao fight, of course, this fight we just seen between Spence and Porter. Yeah. But as far
Triple G too.
Yeah, Triple G. As far as the action goes, it's going to be an all-out war. Those guys aren't going to box. They're going to go in there wanting to take each other out. Somebody's getting knocked out. Yeah. That fight's not going 12.
It's hard to say that will be fight of the year because a lot of times with fights like that, you don't know if one of those guys is going out in 3 or if they're going out in 8 or whatever the case is, because they both have that kind of pop in their punches. That fight could end in round 5, in which case it might be like the knockout of the year, but maybe not the fight of the year. You know what I mean? So
that's true.
Those ones are tough. Those ones are tough to call.
That's gonna be a barn burner right there. That's gonna be a banger.
Yeah, it is.
I'll say it should be good for as long as it lasts. That's what I'll say. For as long as it lasts, it should be good.
Nate,
it's like Nate's fights. It should be good for as long as they last.
Yeah, exactly.
And Nate getting back in the ring.
Yes, sir.
October 27th.
October 27th.
The Hollywood Fight Nights, 360 Promotions.
Yes.
You need to get your tickets. This is going to be one of the best, if not the best, event that 360 has put on. You have Buyacek fighting.
Yes.
Right? You have Philly Rubakavla on that card. You have Adrian Corona on that card. You got Nate Weston on that card.
Yes.
The tickets are going fast. I know for a fact that there's a handful of tickets left for this card. Nate has some tickets left that you will not be able to find online. You need to DM Nate Weston for these tickets and get them ASAP. Yes. In these 2 weeks, I figured in about another week, this fight's going to sell out.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of local fighters, a lot of big names out here in Southern California that are going to be on that card. I know the Buyacek fight now a WBC, some type of title fight for the WBC title. So it's going to be a big event. Tom Loeffler puts on a great event at the Avalon there in Hollywood. I'll be out there that day. I'm going to be taking the day off to go to the fights and check it out that day. But you need to get your tickets quick because, like I said, I know for a fact I've talked to people in 360 Promotions as of this morning, and the tickets are going quick. So whatever tickets Nate has on them, you need to hit him up in his DM. Nate, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at NateWeston_. That's NateWeston_. Just DM me and I got you.
Do yourself a favor, follow Nate on Instagram too. I'm not. I don't say that about everybody. Nate's Instagram is awesome.
Big shout out to Christine, the author. Hazel, what's up, Christine? Thank you for tuning in to our program, man. Long time no see. How's things out there in Texas?
Thanks.
Nate, yeah, make sure to follow him. Nate, the Great Weston.
Nate, the Great
Is
Weston.
there anywhere else that we should
Where
follow?
can we find you, Nate?
Any shout-outs that you want to give?
Well, basically, you can just find. I'm just on Instagram, really. I got Twitter, but I really don't. Go
You don't
on
use
much.
it that much?
Yeah, but it's Nate Weston _. But I want to give a shout out to Charles Bosecker. I want to give out a shout out to Elijah Dumas. I want to give a shout out to my team, The Secret, Mustafa, everybody in Atlanta, everybody in Cali. I want to give a shout out to Stacks. I want to give a shout out to you for having me on the show. Just Boxing. We're going to do it big. I just want to say thank you. I'm grateful. And October 27th, I'm coming to put on a great show. It will be a knockout. I don't know which round yet, but I'm pushing hard.
What camp are you training out of now?
Right now, we're just kind of freelancing because I just got back from the Triple G camp, so I'm everywhere.
A little bit of everywhere.
So
huh?
if a fighter want to get some sparring in, come holler at me. If a fighter want to fight, if you're at 147 and 154 and the money is right, hit me up and with it.
You can follow me on Supreme Boxing on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and on our website, supremeboxinginc.com. Make sure to follow the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame as well. We have the new interactive museum inside of the Boulevard Mall at Heads Up Las Vegas. We have a very nice interactive museum there. You can go there. You can see a lot of stuff. We have a ring in there. We have speed bags. We have punching bags. We have memorabilia, not just signed autographed gloves, but we have memorabilia from Muhammad Ali, from Chico Castillo, Diego Castillo. Excuse me, I'm all tongue-tied right now. From Corrales and Castillo, from their fights. We've got stuff from Joe Cortez in there. I mean, you name it, we've got stuff in that Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame Museum. The WBC has been a big sponsor to help us out as well. And, of course, Just Boxing Live. Make sure to follow us. Sean, go ahead.
Couple things. I actually have a few shout-outs to give. I want to give a shout-out to a number of former podcast guests that competed last night or that were hosting last night. So shout out to Ray Rodis as well as Melody Doria, who have been guests here and put on a great show at Pico Rivera Sports Arena last night for Red Boxing Promotion. And on that card, we got to see Eduardo Diaz, who is a guest here, as well as Adelaida Delilah Ruiz, La Cobra, who both came through with victories. Congratulations and shout out to them. Aaron Tohill, Sergio, who I saw there as well, Cutman Sergio
Estrada.
Oh,
yeah, man.
Shout out to Sergio.
He was trying. I know. I seen him on your Instagram too.
He's cool.
Yeah, he said to say what's up. He's trying to get me in trouble leaving beers at my station and stuff like that. No, I'm just messing around. Sergio's great. So shout out to them as well. And of course, thank you to Combat Sports Collective. As you can see, the CBD water, or they offer all types of different things in terms of photography, videography, apparel, waters, lotions, or creams. I'm not sure if it's lotions or cream. The CBD things. I'm not with it.
Is it
you
oil?
know, not yeah, like or an oil. Is that what it is?
I'm not sure.
An oil? Yeah. I'm not the. All the kids use stuff these days that I haven't.
All the
tried.
kids, huh?
Yeah.
They all use CBDs. All the kids use CBDs.
I know. I'm like a crotchety old man. So that, and then of course, follow me on Instagram at Just Boxing Live, on Facebook at Just Boxing Live, and that's it for this episode of Just Boxing Live with Nate Weston. Thank you. Shout out to you for coming on.
Thank you, Sean.
I appreciate it, and that's all I got for you guys.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.